I set up a booth at a holiday craft fair, and today I want to tell you all about how it went, including the products I sold, how much I made, my major lessons learned, and if I think it was worth it. Stick around and check it out. Now I've broken this video up into three main sections: the event I picked and what I did for it, the results I got, including the three biggest lessons I learned, and the money I made and whether or not I would do it again. All right, so number one, the event. I had a 6 foot by a 6 foot space for a booth in a store in a high scale strip mall in Northern Virginia. They called it a pop-up shop, so technically it wasn't a craft fair, but it had a lot of the same requirements. I needed a table for a booth setup, inventory, multiple ways to make payments. I needed to work around other vendors, all that kind of stuff. It was a weekend event, so I spent about 17 hours over 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And although it was not a holiday-themed store, I picked the weekend after Thanksgiving because I wanted to try my hand at holiday-themed products. Now, because it was in a high-end mall with a very nice movie theater and even an Apple store, it had a lot of wealthy customers. And that'll really come into play later in the video. So why did I do this event? One word: experience. I needed experience in doing bulk inventory, preparing a booth like I would for a craft show that we'd normally think of, getting a method for tracking inventory, refining my pricing, and working with customers. All this experience will tell me whether or not I want to include events like this in my business model. Now, craft shows are really good for getting your business known. You're getting your name out there. Although I didn't do it to get my name out, I'm moving from the area next month. If someone wanted to order something and have me mail it to them, I'm certainly not going to turn that down. I also referred people to my YouTube channel and other social media, which is also a good thing. Now, I didn't do this for money. I'm not retired yet, so I'm still getting full active duty pay. That makes this the perfect time to do this event because there's no risk involved, and therefore no anxiety to make a certain profit. I just wanted to at least break even. So my strategy was to build as much inventory as I could in the time that I had. Now, I'll show you a lot of that inventory in just a second. I wanted my products to range from relatively cheap to quite expensive. I made some items that I could batch out 10 or so relatively quickly, and some things that took a lot longer to make. Now, I signed up about a month before the event, so I had about 3.5 weeks to prepare for it and build my inventory. So let's talk about those products. I made a total of 24 products with various inventories from one-of-a-kind items up to 32 of one particular item, which was one of the ornaments that I only sold 2 of. I put my laser to work and churned out a bunch of ornaments, which was probably my biggest disappointment of the event because they did not sell well. Now, I don't know if they weren't the right color or type or price, but they barely sold. The one exception was this Grinch ornament that I made 6 of last minute based on my daughter's recommendation, and they sold out pretty quickly. Another thing I made with my laser was this gnome kit for kids. I had my kids paint them up for the display and put everything the customer would need in these little bags. They seemed to be a pretty big hit, and I found out that some people have a tradition of painting something up each year. So I'll certainly be doing that one again. I also did it for these little trees that just nest together, but my laser broke before I could batch out more. I made some really popular items from last year, like these trees you probably recognize, that I stained walnut and then put fairy lights on the back of. And I took one YouTuber's advice and then made a jig to make them really, really quickly, and this thing was money. Now, these trees sold pretty well, so I was happy with it. I also made these snowflakes that you've probably seen from Matthew Peach, and unfortunately I only sold 1. I guess it's just not a popular thing here. It may have also been because initially I had it put up in the display in the background, which no one really saw because they were so focused on the items on the table. Nothing against Matthew Peach. I love his videos. This just wasn't my favorite project. I even made the jig that he did in the video. I just didn't enjoy it. So I won't be doing that one next year. I saw the concept for this toilet caddy online, and I really liked it. We're big Grinch fans in our family. And so you could have this side facing out, or you could just have the walnut side facing out. I made 10 of these really super simple boxes out of 1x4s and stained walnut with clear coat over top of it. And 5 of them, I put the words across the front, and 5 of them I left plain. Surprisingly, I only sold one of these, and I sold all but one of just the plain ones. But for the time investment and the low cost on the materials, it was definitely worth it. Another quick and easy and cheap item I made was this Christmas tag with different sayings on them to give customers options, and they sold relatively well. I made one custom item for this event, which was this cross void that I made out of walnut, maple, and padauk. Unfortunately, it didn't sell, so that's going on my wall. Finally, to make sure I had more of a variety of products, I included some of my own stuff, like the 2 American flags I had displayed in my shop, one of which sold, and this stove cover that I made for our last house that we don't use anymore. Okay, so how did it go? Well, I got exactly what I wanted, experience. So in that regard, it was a success. Now, I learned 3 key lessons during this event. Number 1, do your proper prior planning and stick to your plan. That's kind of hard to say. Proper prior planning. As I usually do before I do something for the first time, I research the crap out of this. I built an extensive SOP, standard operating procedure, that told me everything I needed to do to prepare for the event and when to do it. Now, along the way, I learned some valuable lessons, some of them the hard way, and had to modify the timelines with some of these tasks. Now, I've compiled all of this information into a PDF that I will link in the description below. You can have for free. It's not perfect for every situation, but it includes all the things you need to consider and do before, during, and after each event, including recommendations for questions to answer, products to use, timelines you'll want to stick to, keys to success, and even a basic inventory sheet that will help you run the numbers that I'll give you later. All right, key takeaway number 2. Match products to the customers you expect to get. When you're preparing your inventory and what to price those things, you have to consider who your customers are, what they want, and how much they're willing to pay, which will take a little bit of reconnaissance on your part. Usually the venue will tell you what the customers want, maybe what they'll be willing to pay, but the event coordinator should be able to help you with this. I had the event coordinator and other vendors tell me my prices were actually too low, just based off the customer base. These were seasoned experts that told me this, and they ended up being right. The reason why is because of the customers that shop at this particular location, but it also got me thinking about perceived value. You see, sometimes if your prices are low, people think that your products are cheap and not valuable. If your prices are high, the higher your quality of your products seem to be. And there's nothing that says that you can't change the price of your products throughout the venue. I use these chalkboard tags with chalk pens, and so I could just change the prices as I thought that they needed to be changed. Now, you also don't want to just price your work based on how much it would sell on Etsy. You're not selling on Etsy. People get to see and touch your products firsthand, so don't let them devalue your work. So the trick is to consider your customer base and find that right balance. All right, key takeaway number 3 is that you never know exactly what will sell. I figured a lot of my products would sell like crazy, and they didn't, and the ones I thought wouldn't sell very much did. In fact, 2 of my best sellers were recommendations from my family, one from my wife and one from my daughter. I was also surprised to see some of my products go for as much as they did. So my strategy in the future will continue to be to have products that cover a range of prices and types. Now, I learned a ton more lessons, but I didn't want this video to be super long, and this isn't my normal content. So if you want more information or specific details, be sure to put it in the comments, and I'll try to make another video about it. All right, so let's talk numbers. The event or venue cost me $200 for an entry fee. I had to buy some materials for the booth that I didn't have before, like a tablecloth and some other stuff. And I'll leave a link in the description for all the things I had or wished I had if you want to go check that out. That stuff amounted to about $100. I spent about $400 on the materials to make the products themselves. Now, this doesn't include all the labor. I did track some of the time it took me to build specific items, but certainly not all of them I had in my booth. So for me, my break-even point was $700. With all my inventory, I had the potential to make over $2,000, or at least that was my estimate going into it. So if I could get even half of that, I would be happy. That would give me a $300 profit. Now divide that 300 by 17 hours of work if you want to calculate labor over the weekend. I made $17.65 an hour. So when all was said and done, I made about $1,288. That's $558 over my break-even point and equates to almost $35 an hour. Not too bad. So, would I do this again? The answer is definitely maybe, if the situation is right. I understand that the event I did was very different than an actual craft fair. If I had done a craft fair, I might have had more customers looking for products like mine, and I might have made more sales. I would also want to spread out my building of inventory over the year. I crammed a lot of production into 1 month and was pretty stressed out the whole time that I may not have enough products in my booth. I'd rather make products as I get scrap wood throughout the year and maybe use the last month for all the finishing and refining just prior to the show. So maybe one day in the future, you might see me do something like this again. If you want to know more about my experience or have specific questions, be sure and put them in the comments below, and I'll try to answer every one of them as quickly as I can. That's it for this video. We'll see you next time.